Hello everyone, Happy New Year, and we are excited to welcome you to our Christie Connect 2021.
We are so delighted that you've all tuned in, and we're happy to host this show in the next 2.5 hours for you. Who is we? This is Mike Steinbrecher and myself, Markus Seppenfeld.
Last year, we were so excited to announce our famous Connect happening again. Thanks to COVID, we had to adapt and changed it to an online version. To keep the idea of the Connect alive, we have created our own website to communicate to you, but you also have the chance to communicate with each other in the chat. Still, we're going to run Zoom as a backup, but over the past weeks when we did some rehearsals and tests, we just found out that the quality of Zoom is not good enough, or it just drops here and there, and as we want to show the interface in certain parts of the show, we wanted to keep the quality high. So again, that's why we completely focus on the website and the chat next to it. Some tiny housekeeping rules for the website or for the best experience on your end. Make sure that you checked the HD quality on the bottom of the screen and that you checked the live button so that you're really following us live. Again, Zoom is running in the background as a backup if something happens or for some regions where the YouTube connection might not work. Of course, after the show, the YouTube stream will be available as a recorded video as well. I think that's enough of a tech talk right now. Markus, shall we get started?
Absolutely, Mike. You said enough of the tech talk, but no worries. We're actually starting the tech talk right now because Pandora's box is about the latest development, and this is what we want to share with you today. As Mike said, we would have loved to host a regular show and gather you all in Cologne and meet you in person, what everybody is hoping for at the moment. But unfortunately, we couldn't do that. So we decided what is the best format, what we can deliver. You know, the regular Connect was always about the people, about you, to connect each other, to see each other and have a good time, and also learn about latest developments. We've decided, due to all those time regions and everything, it makes it challenging. So we decided to really condense the show to only, in quotes, the technical news and the exciting stuff we're going to show to you today. What can you expect? We're having technical information. We're showing you development, which is done already. So there are a couple of things coming up right away. We also share a little outlook with you, that you understand where we're heading to, what to expect over the coming month. Today, what you can expect is a show packed with this information, but also we want to get your feedback and your questions and answer those in Q&A sections. So we're splitting up the entire event into 3 blocks, and we're giving you the chance of all the time putting your questions into the chat on the website, please. And we'll make sure during those Q&A sessions to answer as many questions as possible. At the end of the show, we're still here and we can answer even more questions, but for now, I guess it's time to begin. And our stuff is about hardware, software in terms of Pandora's box and widget, and it is also about tools. But where could we start best than with the hardware? Mike, let's get started.
Thank you, Markus. All right. So as he said, let's talk about hardware. We're gonna have a new server revision 5 coming up, and we have decided to pick that platform only to serve all needs, meaning that we will have this platform for the player and the servers of solutions. This just makes it easier. It gives you all the display at the front, and performance-wise, it's just extremely better. We enhanced the performance a lot of this hardware. So at the end, you actually get a performance level of up to 4 times 4K 60 uncompressed at 10-bit color depth, or amazingly 20 times 4K 60 compressed. Again, we're going to offer the hardware with 3 different performance kits. So we're going to start at 1 terabyte disk space and going up to 32 terabyte disk space. Another option we now added is that you can select different graphic cards. We're still going to run with the P4000, but you will also be able to choose between the RTX 4 or the RTX 6000, as we have a few GPU-hungry features on the horizon. Another new feature of this hardware is that it has the 10G network port standard-wise included already. But the hardware is more than just the housing and the disk space and all this. It's about in- and output cards. So let's have a look at audio first. Here, we're going to add the Dante audio card. This card then gives you 128 input channels and 128 output channels and redundant network possibility. Of course, we're still going to offer our ASIO audio cards that we had in the past, but as Dante is a well-known alliance and is used a lot, it just made sense to add the Dante to our product range of audio cards. Now, let's have a look at video. As Christie is a founder of the SDVoE Alliance, software-defined video over Ethernet, and we're having our Terra product range, it just made sense to add a SDVoE input card to the product and to Pandora's box. The good thing about this card is that it gives you virtually unlimited sources via IP coming in, and it has embedded scaling and frame rate conversion. It completely flawlessly blends into our Terra system, and the card later is controlled by the Terra controller or later with the Widget designer. So in Pandora's box, as always, no configuration is needed. Pandora's box handles the card as any other input feed, and it just routes the signal in. The cool feature about this card is that beside the fiber input, there is an HDMI output directly on the card. So by just connecting a monitor to it, you get a perfect information of what is coming in over the fiber cable directly, and you have good feedback and a control option. Let's have a look at another input card, and we're gonna watch a nice video from Deltacast first. Here it comes.
We started working with Christie in as early as 2007. Back then, they chose Deltacast for its qualitative, state-of-the-art product range and our well-known VideoMaster SDK, allowing them to ingest both SDI and DVI sources using the same API. Ever since, Pandora's box and our products evolved and were used as a successful combination in live entertainment or fixed install applications. Today, offering the Flex product, we are still following the same strategy, combining various sources into a common API. This enables Christie and their customers to make the most of their various projects, always the same reliable way.
As most of you know, we have worked with Deltacast since ages, so it just made sense to add this awesome Flex card to our product range. The cool thing about the Flex card is that you have the gateway card mounted into your server in your hardware, and then over a USB-C cable, it's not USB-C, but they're using the same connectors, you connect the different modules. So one module is DisplayPort, another one is HDMI, and then you have the 3G or the 12G SDI input modules. And then the cool thing is that you can mix these different modules and just connect them to the gateway card. So it gives you the complete flexibility what kind of inputs you want to have at your server. So at the end, this gives you up to 16 times HD SDI at the same time, or 4 times 4K over HDMI or 12G. So this really rounds up our input card possibilities. Again, we are not eliminating any of the cards we had in the past. We are just adding these to our product range to really round up what is possible in our hardware as input options. But Pandora's box is more than just hardware. So over to you, Marcus.
That is a great introduction about the hardware offering we're going to offer, to continue and to add to. But there is obviously more than hardware. Every server is shipped with an application which is called the Pandora's box menu. So basically, this is for the hardware Christie is shipping, but also possibly for most of you on your private PCs, a great option to dive into the Pandora's box universe. Because starting a computer is really the first thing you see, it is the menu. This is why we sat down and we're really thinking about what can we do better, how can we make everything more accessible, and in general, today will be about making things easier and more powerful. So even within the menu, we decided what is the essential part we need on the display. And obviously, after overhauling it technically and visually, we have come up with the crazy idea to add a Pandora's box button to the main interface. The same is obviously for the widget designer. Those are the tools you would usually start when using Pandora's box on your hardware, on our hardware, it doesn't matter. The menu gives you an access to those applications. Another one used to be the VNC remote, which has been replaced by a new version of it, the server management. We'll have a look at that in a moment. Together with those very interesting and needed applications, we have a couple of more icons on the front screen, and please welcome with me the new layout of the Pandora's box menu. What does it mean? You can achieve things quicker, you can have things on hand, and what we did with that will be explained by Yvonne in the next clip for you. Hi Yvonne, can you tell us where you are and what you're currently doing?
Sure. I'm here in the training center testing the brand new Pandora's box menu, and I'm so excited to see the new features and enhancements. Our customers will love it because it makes things so much easier and quicker.
Sounds amazing. Can you tell us more about it?
Absolutely. The new menu is much more elegant and structured to find applications and settings quicker and easier. We've removed millions of sub-menus and pop-up windows. For instance, to set the taskbar on or off, it is on hand now here on the main screen, and the default state can be set as well. In general, larger buttons with icons provide a visual understanding of the underlying action and speeds up the process. Custom applications can be assigned from the main screen as well, and a respective icon appears automatically. And important as well is that all settings here are organized in a single common screen.
That are a lot of changes. Does anything remain the same?
Not at all. There's a new server management, which is based on the former VNC remote tool, but has been totally redesigned technically and visually.
Sounds promising. What does it mean exactly?
Well, the basic idea to provide an interface to remote control into different Pandora's box systems remains the same. Yeah, but however, the general idea is to reduce the need to use the VNC remote tool. This is why we offer more information about the servers in the interface. For example, here you can find information next to the icons or in the table, and you have an overview about, for example, the network settings or the resolution, and you can spot the differences directly. To monitor the entire system instead of Pandora's box systems, instead of only Pandora's box systems, we've introduced the possibility to add any network device in the interface. So you have the possibility to ping it, to check if it's online or offline, and this is visualized in this interface, and you get the feedback.
You've mentioned that reducing VNC connections is key. Why is that?
Well, showing more information in the interface is one approach to reduce the need of the VNC. But what I love the most about the server management is the remote installer. It massively saves valuable time and avoids confusion. We are seeing customers sticking to older versions because they have no time to update the versions on all machines. Sometimes they have installations with up to 100 of servers. So it takes one day to copy the versions to all machines, to run the installation and to select the version in the menu. And now we can bring this down to only minutes.
Thanks for the update, Yvonne.
You're welcome.
Yvonne has already mentioned a lot of new exciting features about the new menu and the server management, but it was high-level information, and we're here today to give you as well an in-depth information. So I'm here at the presentation desk to give you more information about all these things. We're starting with the menu itself. You're already seeing it. It is consisting out of icons which can be easier to understand, that you have them directly on hand, and everything is kept in the same frame as Yvonne mentioned already. So whenever you would go to the settings, you have the chance of, for instance, selecting Pandora's box. Many things remain the same. You would for sure choose the installation path, choose the version, but what has changed, for instance, is that the master or client mode will change the behavior of the button on the main screen, because it is unusual to start a master or a client one after another. As well, when looking at the widget designer, you will find familiar settings like the version and the free, regular, or unlimited mode, but we've added to choose a project file for an auto start directly. As well, a checkbox for the viewer mode, but we'll speak about that at a later stage during this event. So all those informations are just more accessible and are reassigned to different places that you can find the information better and have them on hand. For instance, the taskbar. It was always hidden in a submenu. So in this case, you simply click the flip switch and the desktop and the main taskbar will be accessible. You can even set its default state. So whenever you're starting up your computer, you might want to have the taskbar visible, so this has also been addressed in this new version. We've got rid of a couple of network protocols we shouldn't use anymore, so we've really streamlined and cleaned up a lot more things than just the visual interpretation of it. I already mentioned the server management, and this is something we want to have also a closer look at. Basically, we have kept the idea of the former VNC remote, but we wanted to make it as well cleaner, more visible, and adding more information to prevent to use actual VNC connections. What's the idea behind it? Usually, you always end up in a situation that you have a manager somewhere running, so your local workspace, and you need to remote control remote systems, our clients in the network. You might need to install a version. You might need to copy content or whatever. So this is why it comes in handy to have a VNC connection. But at the same time, making it easier by removing the amount of needs of VNC connections also removes complexity and gives you better workflow. So let's dive into it. When opening the server management, we have changed one thing for sure. The first page is the active page. So you will see all devices currently running in the network. So you have the known information, what we used to have before as well, but a lot more information in the table below as well. So all those icons show up automatically when a menu is running in the network. And what you can see is verbose information down here in the table, which helps you to see, oh wait, there is one machine running at 10 gigabits, or one might have dropped to 100 megabits because of a broken connection or something. So all that information, including the versions which are installed or how their status are, can be seen in this table down here, where you can see more or less information depending how you structure your interface. Having all the systems at once might be also a problem because you're being overwhelmed with a huge network. If you imagine, and this is what happens really in some cases, to have up to 100 systems in a single network. So you don't want to always find the right one in a specific area. So you want to make sure to structure yourself. And this is how you can do it by adding pages as well. When you add a page, let's call it room number 1. You can have your own structure and add devices from the main screen. When having those devices over here, you can position them wherever you like. This is already known functionality, but what you realize is that only the devices on this page are down below in this table up here. It helps you to organize yourself, to have only the devices you need on that certain page, and by sending commands, you can as well send commands only to those specific areas. So if we have a look at the commands up here, you can send them system-wide or only in the current page. So in case you want to start all managers or all clients, or you want to reboot or shut down a system, or only the ones in a specific room. As we specified before that the Pandora's box button is now defined as being a master or client, the menu can tell what it shall start. So if you start all clients, it wouldn't try to start a manager's client or something. So it really cleans up the workflow as well and makes it easier to access the information. Let's have a look at the properties of that device. What you will see is that you can set the alias, but you can also set a MAC address, meaning we can have the chance of also using wake on LAN, using this menu and sending out the wake on LAN commands if needed. Another step is that you can have multiple images. So also as well, when you think you would use a laptop instead, you have a variety of icons as well available here. There are more icons than just the regular Pandora's box systems, because we've also added the TCP devices Yvonne was already mentioning. So for instance, I could create a device called network switch, if I can spell it right. And we could add its IP address, which is the 241, and this is a typo. I'm sorry about that. And we could also give it a network switch icon in this case. So what you would see is that you can also have network devices inside your workspace over there to monitor your entire system. So you're not limited to Pandora's box, but you're also having more icons. Everything what speaks TCP is basically able to be placed in here. We're pinging the device. As soon as we get a reply, we can show that it is online. Projectors, LED wall controllers, matrix switches, or whatever you come up with and you're interested in can just be placed on the workspace as well to get a better system overview about what's happening on site. One very important feature, though, as well is that we're always trying to make it easier and saving time. And what is the most time-consuming thing you would once in a while do on site? It is installing new versions. This might be in a very complex fixed install with loads of devices. It might be on a rental staging event because you have your own machines and you're renting some. So you always need to go into every single device and install it. Let's have a look at that as well. When selecting the install version, you will be able to select from Pandora's box, widget designer, or Pandora's box menu, select the installer, and this installer will be sent via the network to the remote clients. Even if you don't have an open network share because of security reasons, we will send the installer to the remote system and we can install it remotely without any needs of a VNC connection. You would simply select the ones you want to install, and then you can still set the post-installation actions. Set version on your remote system, because it doesn't make sense to install it but not selecting the version. And the other one is delete installer, because you don't want to end up with a pile of installers on the remote machines and you have a perfect workflow for installing, but once in a while you need to clean up the hard drive. So this is why we came up with those options as well within the server management. I guess that is a great improvement already. And we can go on to the next topic as well, which we have within the menu, and which is very prominent in the first row of the menu. The new encoder tool. You might think, wait, there are a lot of Pandora's box tools already available. We do have the image converter, we have a QuickTime converter, we have a MPEG encoder extension within Pandora's box directly, and we have a couple of more DOM converters and so ever. But all these tools have their own limitations and their own workflow in a way, because you need to open and use separate applications. We set out to solve that problem and to fix the workflow for you. So our goal is really to have all those tools commonly together in one application where you can do all these tasks by assigning one task list, and that's all you need to do. The other step, which is very important, is that we want to make use of the remote systems and not always only rendering locally on your machine. But let's pull up the interface first, then we can have a look how that would work. In this case, it is not even working on the menu because this is the outlook I was speaking about. We're also having a couple of features which are not available right away, but we really want to give you an idea of what we're heading to and what we're planning to offer to you to make your life easier. When looking at this application, and it is really a mock-up for development currently, what we're still going to show you, you will see that we have different tabs up here. A local rendering device, and we have the renderings and the encoding devices on separate servers in the network. Usually, your manager PC might be a laptop, or at least the weakest point in the entire setup. So encoding content on your local drive and on your local CPU doesn't really make sense. We have structured the application into two different parts. The one is just the graphical user interface, which you can start on any weak PC, for instance. And you have the encodings, which are hosted by the Pandora's box menu and which are running on each system in your network. In this case, you can simply open up the user interface, connect to that remote machine, and it will give you all the information you need to assign rendering tasks to that remote machine. In that case, you can start a job at the end of your day, probably when you're going home from the venue, and you keep the machine running overnight. If I would have done that and Mike returns to site in the early morning, he could check in to the same machine with a different PC because I took mine, and he can check the progress which has been done overnight. So this is really about keeping the machines busy, which are good in CPU and GPU performance, and keeping your local device out of the equation. Let's have a brief look how it will look. Again, this is a mock-up. This is not the final application look, but however, we want to talk you through that. If I would select a video, the one we've just seen from Yvonne, it would show up in the task list over here. And I'm currently doing that on my local machine. It would be exactly the same workflow on a remote. What you see is that it comes up with a video and an audio portion. Even here, we've made it fairly simple because by clicking on the settings of the video, all we basically offer are different codecs you want to choose. The HAP is a regular HAP encoding. So you could actually even use it on a different hardware, on a different machine, in a different application. But it is the one as we can most and best use in Pandora's box when looking for compressed content and when being keen on a single file. We do also offer DDS sequences, basically what you know from Pandora's box, the image sequences which use the same HAP encoding, but it is an image sequence instead of a single video file. We're offering DPX in different colored apps and all that stuff, so we're offering the most important codecs for Pandora's box. Let's stick to HAP at the moment. You will have a frame rate conversion, you can resize it if needed, and then you would simply hit OK, or apply in this case, and you're good to go for the video portion. Within the audio, it's even simpler. You're just selecting the 16-bit or 24-bit or the sample rate, whatever you want to have, apply it, and you're ready to go. the last missing piece is actually only that you would go ahead and tell the encoding device where it should render the content to. As video and audio belongs together, we have one common file path, and this is where it would be rendered to. As you can also export image sequences, we would place the video a level higher in the folder so that you can find all those informations. It works the same as well when adding an image sequence. So let's have a look at that quickly. If I select a PNG or DDS file at the moment, you would simply hit is image sequence and you would import the entire folder and you have the same settings, only without audio, because obviously we don't have an audio set for an image sequence. I mentioned the other tools as well. So what we are trying to solve as well, this will not be part of the first implementation, but our goal is already that we can add more tasks. Currently, we only have video and audio tasks here. What we will do is also adding the DOM conversion and the splitting to the exact same tool. So in the end, you don't have to use separate tools to do all that stuff. You would just choose the incoming file, tell it to do the DOM conversion, to split it into different folders or image sequences or videos, whatever you select afterwards. You hit the render button and you're good to go. And again, as this is split into a user interface and a rendering engine, you have the chance of really leaving that by itself and just at whenever time check back and see what the status is. As we've made that separation, it will also be possible to host the exact same dialogue directly in the Pandora's box interface. So you will in the end have a tab as well in Pandora's box where you have the same interface as you would have as a standalone application, because often it makes sense just to do this. You don't want to start Pandora to do some encoding, or probably you do want to do that. So we also give you the chance of encoding the same way content which is already in Pandora's box, or which you grab from any other file directory from the remote servers or your local ones, and you can start encoding those. So this is the idea about the encoding tool. And as you see, as it is very prominent in the menu, it is definitely something what we believe in and we're heavily developing. But this is the disclaimer for now. It will probably not make it into the first release of the menu. But still, we wanted to share the idea and really let you know what we're trying to solve, always in the aim of a better workflow and making things easier. Speaking about that, with all that transcoding, we wanted to simplify the process as well a little bit, because why always transcoding, so re-encoding content, when you could create it in the right way in first place? What is the need or the sense in creating and delivering 16-bit TIFF sequences and spending hours on uploads and downloads or even shipping hard drives around the world when all you need is a HEP file in the end? So creating it correctly in first place would make way more sense. And this is what we're solving as well. For Adobe products, speaking of the Media Encoder, Premiere Pro, and After Effects, we have created a native plugin which we want to share with you. So let's do a detour in the menu and quickly add a custom application. So if we just select the button from the main screen, we can navigate to an executable. In this case, I would select the After Effects, and you will see it will directly show up in the interface with its own icon, and only a button click away, you can easily launch the application. The Adobe products, which I just mentioned, do support native plugins, and this is what we've developed for you, for the content providers, and this is what we're giving out to everyone to make the process easier to directly encode the right format. If we start a project in After Effects, and if you're done with your job, all you would need to do is adding the composition to the render queue. You would select the output module and select from the codecs, from the formats over here. We have simplified as well in here that we don't have one single codec which comes up with loads of settings and all that stuff. We're really having the same codecs which you saw before as well, including HAP, but also including DDS sequences from within the native understanding of After Effects. Selecting the HAP, going to the format options, it only leaves you with the selection of snappy compression or not. So it is really not hard to configure it, and it's basically impossible to do something wrong. So finally, speaking to your content providers, it is really about telling them, use this plugin in your known environment, just select it, exported it, and you cannot do anything wrong. It works the same way in the media encoder, as I mentioned. So if we add it to the Adobe Media Encoder, it will take a while to launch it and to transfer the composition over to it. And then you will see this encoding task on the right-hand side in the interface. It works the exact same way. You will find the Christie codecs over here. We would select the HAP, and you're ready to go. All you need to do from now on is hitting the render button. So this is the simplest way to create content in a format as you need it, and really avoiding uploads, downloads, and time-consuming transcodes, because you do it right from the beginning. We've demoed everything on a Windows platform. So how about the Mac OS X platform when your content providers are using that platform? We've got you covered. We've also created the exact same plugin for the Mac platform. So it is the same workflow. It works like a charm on both systems. And this is how you can solve all your content questions in the future. The future is very near. This encoder is directly available. And we can solve a lot of confusions and discussions about codec with that. And hopefully, you will enjoy it. The last thing, when encoding so much content, is always that you end up with a pile of hard drives and multiples of videos and versions, and it's always a huge challenge to import all that stuff into Pandora's box. We cannot take away the loads of content from you, because that depends on the show. But what we can do is making the import way easier. And this is what we're solving for you. Check it out. Hi, Thomas.
Hey, Marcus.
It seems you're testing a new feature in Pandora's box.
Yes, I am. I'm actually testing the advanced import feature, which greatly improves the way of ingesting content into Pandora's box. It's about handling many files in a greatly improved way.
What's the real challenge with content?
Well, content always comes in different flavors, right? So on most installations or shows, you have different content creators which all follow their own workflow. So you end up with different folder structures, namings for files and things like that. And you have to rearrange or reorder, restructure all that to your own workflow.
How does Pandora's box come into play then?
Well, at first you have to choose the assets you want to import, right? So you want to maybe spare different files like preview files or Mac files. So you want to spare these, of course, not to import into Pandora's box. Next thing to think about is the folder structure. Do you want to keep the folder structure provided by the content creator, or you can choose to flatten it and maybe have all clips in just one folder? The settings can be done individually here for each file, and also the frame rate can be set differently on the start of the import procedure.
What does this mean to the user?
Well, the most important thing, efficiency, right? Efficiency means time, and time is the most important thing for each project. So this feature is most important for the huge projects which have to handle more than hundreds of image sequence files, for example. The staff has to right-click each individual file and import it to Pandora's box, set the frame rate, repeat that 100 times. If there's an error, repeat. If there is a new file version, repeat, and so on. So we want to reduce that work and push that workload to the computer side. In the end, not only the operator will benefit from that feature, but the whole project maybe will, because it speeds up the whole thing and pays back in labor costs, for example.
That makes perfect sense. Thanks for the explanation, Thomas.
You're welcome.
Welcome to our first Q&A round, and we're here in our more relaxed area, sitting down to really taking the time to answer your questions. I guess we've covered a lot with codecs, and this last feature really rounds it up, what we're trying to give to you to make your life easier and really striving to have products which are kind of simpler but more powerful.
Markus, directly let's jump into the first questions, as there has been quite a bunch in the chat. Sammy is asking, what about the encoder plugins and the Adobe plugin? Are they free of charge?
Okay, there's a lot to talk about. First of all, the encoder plugin for Adobe. This is for sure free of charge. We don't want to make $10 out of it and preventing you from using it. So it's really about solving the issue about creating content the right way, and how often do even we, and we don't do the productions, we are being asked what is the best way to encode it, how can we get that right away. So this should really solve your problems, the content creator problems, and this is why we want to give it away for free, because we're better off having a nice workflow than making $10 out of something. For the encoding later on, it is slightly different. It is not an option. We're still not selling the encoding tool, but what you need to have is a Pandoras box dongle. So it will be bound to the menu. The menu is still working without a dongle, no worries, but the encoding does only work as long as a dongle of Pandoras box is plugged in. So you kind of need to purchase Pandoras box, but you don't need to purchase the encoder by itself. Great, thanks that those questions are coming in already. I guess, Mike, we should clarify again, are all our optional cards still available? Something like the 10G network card or something?
Yes, so all the input cards I just mentioned earlier in the show, so the Dante, the SDVUE, and the Flex card, they are just adding to our optional cards. Also, we have now a 10G port standard in the new hardware, but we're still going to offer the 10G network card as an additional option if you need more ports in a hardware. So we are not taking anything out, we are just adding more possibilities. Let's have a look at the next questions.
We have a screen right next beside us, so we always need to be a little distracted and not look to the camera for that moment.
Marcus, regarding the Flex card, how long can the USB style breakout cable be, and can you get a locking version for the cables?
Yeah. To be honest, the lengths, I cannot really answer it right now. We are shipping it with a 1 meter length. I know that a little more works for sure. What it basically does is using the PCI Express bus and just shipping the exact same signal over that cable. So as it is a high frequency signal, obviously you can't go with 10 meters or something, but it is not just bound to 25 centimeters or something. It is always also available within a 19-inch rack that you can perfectly mount it, so that is not a problem. Second part of the question, it is as well possible to lock those connectors because you have the holes and yeah, where you can lock those to make it more secure.
Shall I go further? Okay, Marcus, yeah. How many how many inputs of what signal can the Flex card handle at the same time?
Okay. Mike mentioned that briefly, how much we can do maximum. So what we are offering is basically the gateway card, which has 4 inputs, so 4 times USB-C. When you're connecting 4 times 4K, that is basically the maximum bandwidth, which goes about that 16-channel PCI Express bus. So that is the maximum input when you really want to use it at the same time. when going to SDI, so 3G SDI, as we're limited then to HD signals in those 3G SDIs, you can even go up to 16 inputs, which can be connected at a time. On the other hand, you always need to keep in mind when mounting additional components to your system, it always depends on what you're doing as well. Having the fully loaded flex card on the one hand and a 10G network card as well, it might in some configurations overload the system. So it's always a different answer to answer it technically, what's possible to connect and to use by itself or with other stuff together.
Well, back to the question before, as we have the best support team ever, they're already feeding us some more information. So Deltacast is saying that standard cable length will be 1 meter, but some other cable lengths will be available from 0.5 meter to 2 meters. USB-C cable locking mechanism with screws will, with an A-flex 50 centimeter length, will have a locking mode on the module side. So that is the additional answer to the question before.
Yeah, I guess thanks to Steven. I know he's online and they're monitoring as well. And we're really happy to team up with them since many years and really bringing up their great products into our portfolio. So really thank you for the answer and general the support on that side. So maybe I should ask a question as well. Ikanar is asking, I'm sure you'll get to that, but what's the lowest hardware the new software can run on?
Well, it's probably, you can answer that probably better than I do, but well, at least you need Windows 8 or 10. And of course, there's always a question about performance and what you want to do with the software. Of course, we're gonna publish the latest minimum requirements that we think make sense or is needed to run Pandora's box. But yeah, to answer this quickly in detail is a little bit difficult, as it depends if you're just playing back HD or you want to do a high 4K uncompressed 10-bit playback. Do you want to add something, Marcus? But it's
no, I guess that briefly covers it. And anyways, you can always, or you anyways know how to reach us. So for in-depth information about all that exciting stuff we're sharing today, feel free to reach out to support, to sales, to us, anyways at any channel. We're still continuing with the Q&A. I just wanted to add that at this moment, if we cannot open everything perfectly. I'm quickly covering a couple of things I'm seeing about the Adobe plugin. So once again, I want to highlight that this Adobe plugin is a free of charge offering because we want to give it out to you. So there was an additional question on that. So yes, it will be just a download and can be shared with any content provider you work with. And the other one was from Sami as well, if the wrong pixel dimension for instance for HAB is being covered. So some of you might know, some might not have run into that trouble. If you're having resolutions not divisible by 4, which is the compression method HAB is using, then you might end up with critical exports. What we do is keeping the image ratio of the file and keeping it native and adding those pixels that it is divisible by 4, so you will be covered on that as well without any issues. Mike, what's the next? We're overloaded with questions, which is really great. Or pick one for yourself, Mike.
I'll pick one for myself, thank you.
Then I have time to read.
So Bob was asking, what were the free storage options? So yeah, we're gonna have free performance kits starting at 1 terabyte, going over 8 up to 32 terabyte disk space. Maybe talking about this again, as we said, we're not going to offer a player hardware anymore. We're going to use this one hardware platform to serve player and server requests. And actually now the PK1 with 1 terabyte is performance-wise nearly on the level of the PK5 from the old hardware. So this is really an enhancement of the performance. And yeah, this will be more or less the entrance hardware level for players' software. So
yeah, I'll have the time to pick one for myself now. So this seems to work better. You are exciting about the content and the encoding as it feels. So Sam is asking if the encoder is needing to have the content on the same machine. Yes, it does. So what we're not doing is to having kind of a cloud computing or a shared rendering. We are still remote controlling to that machine, but with the local interface, so you don't need to have the VNC, but you're remote controlling the remote computer. So you're really logging to your server, and you can encode what's available on that machine. We're not automatically spreading with this. That is what Pandora's box is doing. But again, if you've encoded the content on your local, or not on your local PC, but on a remote one, you can afterwards put it into the Pandora's box project and spread it. But encoding does only work on those machines where the encoders are running, but the tool gives you the flexibility to connect to any machine in the network easily. To finish up with codecs, I guess, there is also a question, it was Sam as well, how about the Notch LC codec? This is not supported yet. It is definitely on our list because it's an interesting codec. We have focused on the ones we're currently using to make those workflows better, but Notch LC is definitely as well on our list.
Maybe you could quickly repeat the question, is the Adobe plugin going to be licensed product or freeware? We already had this, but maybe just mention it again.
We covered that. It is free of charge to give it out to everyone. So to finish up with our first round of Q&A, I guess, because there's more stuff to come. And again, we're here after the official ending of the event. If you're continuing to send so many questions, we're happy to answer as much of them at the end, if time allows. But we need to continue a little bit. But the last part of that is, when will the Adobe plugin be released? Great addition. Thanks for the comment. It is going to be available tomorrow. So we're having this already as a perfect release ready for you, and we're actually going to present it to you by tomorrow.
All right.
Great.
So
good start.
Yes. We are really happy and excited. I have a feeling now you understand how we're working and how we're going to do these Q&A sections. So as Marcus said, keep on posting your questions in the chat. It really makes fun to watch behind the stage when I'm not presenting. So shall we keep on moving?
Absolutely.
All right. Then
I guess it's time to get a common understanding of a network streaming tool. And therefore, let's have a look at a video first before we continue.
A lot of live production people are thinking about the move toward an IP workflow. That's a good thing. At NewTek, we've been thinking and working with IP for a long time. And for us, IP production workflow is much more than just a replacement for SDI. It's not just a new kind of cable, it's a new kind of universe. But don't worry, IP is a technology you already have. Infrastructure that surrounds you from the moment you wake up. So now we're using it to make television better, more flexible, even more profitable. In a world where any device can connect to every other device, a deep change starts to happen. The production process is immersed in one environment where everything can see everything. Let's think about what that means. Imagine two switchers on a network. This one has 8 inputs, so does that one. And this one can take that one's output as a source. But wait, why can't this switcher choose from any of that one's sources? The answer is, it can, because this is NewTek IP. Now try 10 workstations on that network. Try 1,000. With everything transparent to everything else. On the network, all sources are equal. You want to cut to that live shot over there? Take it. Technically, it's possible. Of course, we can't route everything to everywhere all the time at max resolution. But we don't have to. This is NewTek IP. Ultra-efficient encoding and management allow us to get the right video source to the right place at the right time, all the time. And don't forget, unlike SDI, IP is a two-way connection. Every source is also a destination. The limitations of a 25-year-old standard are what we can gradually start to leave behind. Not overnight, but soon enough. And the emergence of an openly available protocol called NDI will help smooth the transition to IP workflow. Just as the advent of shared media storage changed the way we did post-production, massively shared media sources will reshape live production. History shows us that increasing flexibility is always a good thing. Maybe producers will enjoy the freedom to pop up a control room anywhere there's an Ethernet port. Maybe total access will help broadcasters serve up more content to more outlets, fast enough to keep up with demand. Maybe that new flexibility will make it easy to snap together production dream teams from anywhere in the world. Whatever the future brings, it will be made possible by IP workflow. That much we know. If it takes a while to get there, that's okay. What's important is to move with the world, not against it. If you can harness the inevitable, you can make the most of it. This is how we think about it, and this is what we do. We're New Tech.
Wasn't that a great explanation about what NDI really is and what it's for? There is a good reason why it has been adopted widely in so many different industries. It solves so many problems, as we've just learned. You can have a broadcast stream on your campus and just insert it somewhere and share it across different buildings. You might have complex cabling, which you can avoid by just using a network cable, or probably have a device where you cannot even connect the cable to. And this is why it is a good reason to use NDI in CCTV cams, from rendering applications, or from an iPad, or any other application which we use commonly these days, like Teams or something. So we have set out to also accept NDI inside Pandora's box, to have, for instance, a picture-in-picture right next to me. This is helping us how we can follow what we're doing on the screen, and you can actually follow what's happening on the iPad, because we can add an app. Let me quickly restart that. I'm sorry about that. We can use an app from New Tech, which allows us to send the screen grab from that iPad and also use it as an NDI stream. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. If it is a CCTV cam, if it's a video mixer, or if it is an iPad like this one. So this all helps us to exactly monitor what somebody is doing, what a camera is seeing. There's so many different reasons why you would need NDI, why you should use NDI, and the content doesn't really matter. Let's activate the camera and say hello to Mike again. So this is our Q&A section. You see the presenter's desk over there, and whatever you do, whatever you come up with, wherever you have a reason to use NDI, just put it into Pandora's box. It's the same like any other live input. It doesn't work different. What else could you do with it? Christian will tell you. Hey, Christian.
Hey, Marcus.
I see you're running a lot of NDI streams. Can you speak to that?
Sure. I'm sitting here in one of our test centers, playing around with various NDI inputs in Pandora's box and the widget designer. So all of these videos are NDI streams in Pandora's box, played back on several servers in a different room. And while programming, I noticed no difference to traditional live inputs like DisplayPort or HDMI. It perfectly blends into Pandora's box. The streams just pop up without any configuration needed.
That sounds simple enough. Did you just mention the widget designer as well?
Absolutely. We not only added NDI to Pandora's box, the network streams are now also available in the widget designer. And since NDI behaves like a regular video input, you can use it anywhere within the application. For example, even the motion detector or the face tracker can use it like a regular webcam, with the difference that it can be miles away. Let me show you that. if you open the properties of the video input displays, the drop-down provides you every stream that is available. Simply select one and you're good to go. And of course, you can script all of that. So you can change the source within one button click.
What's the deal of using NDI in the widget designer anyways?
Well, there's so many use cases where operators end up in situations where they have to control devices that they can't see or that are not in the same room. Adding NDI to the widget designer dashboard provides monitoring and control in one interface. Since you can already control the CCTV, you can now put that image right beside your pan tilt command. No more additional monitors or applications needed when triggering cues in broadcast situations. And beside that, the widget designer provides its interface to every HTML5 device that's in the network, for example, this tablet here. So the widget designer is the bridge to display NDI in every web browser.
That definitely allows for many options. You mentioned surveillance cams. Although NDI is supported by many devices nowadays, the ones on our premises aren't.
That's not a problem. The widget designer now also supports RTSP streams, which are very common on those devices. You can use that one instead. But let's quickly set that up. RTSP does not provide its streams like NDI does, so you need to know the URL. Simply select the stream, paste the URL, click Apply, and you're ready to go. This is the backyard in our Cologne office.
Thanks for the interesting update, Christian.
You're welcome.
So we even have NDI in the iPad, or in the widget designer. As I'm a sales guy, I have to use PowerPoint a lot. So let's have a look here. We have a typical Windows PC running PowerPoint somewhere in the back and being connected to our system. And now, of course, I can just easily go to the next topic. We have implemented a PowerPoint remote into Widget Designer. We are already actually having this in a beta version since July, and it has been used on several shows already. Why do we add this? To make it easy to control Pandora's box. As you all know, Widget Designer is based on an HTML5 based platform, so any interface, any device you have that can run a browser is then able to trigger your show. And at the moment in COVID times, it's really cool because I can use my own personal device and I'm not getting any kind of PowerPoint clicker that 10 people before had in their hands. It's also then very easy to trigger a PowerPoint from everywhere around the world. So in the past, we have done a lot of shows already out of a small TV studio here, and so we just published our widget designer into the web, and wherever our presenter was sitting, he just connected to that web page and triggering our widget designer control Pandora's, to control the PowerPoint. Why? Of course, we want to have the PowerPoint here, to have it ready to go, to be able to test it and run as you do it on every normal corporate show. And with the remote, you can also trigger several PowerPoints at the same time. So again, master and backup maybe only, or let's say in a big corporate show, triggering multiple PowerPoints with different languages at the same time. Markus, do you want to show us how this works?
Absolutely, Mike. Happy to do so. What you see behind me is actually the widget designer interface Mike has on its iPad. As you know, this is a regular functionality to remote control the widget. And while Mike is clicking through the presentation, you would also see buttons coming up or speaker notes changing behind me. So how does that work? The idea or the concept behind it is that we're again having two separate parts. We're having a plugin, which is for a regular Windows PowerPoint application, and you would install that on the PowerPoint PC. There is no Pandora's box needed, no widget designer. It is simply PowerPoint and this plugin. That's all you need to do. So the local PowerPoint operator can still continue working as regular. They can click through it, they can do everything, but we have in addition the chance of either remoting or reading information from the PowerPoint. And that works as we're having that PowerPoint plugin inside, or the remote inside the widget designer. It is fairly simple to connect, and I'll quickly demo it to you what you would need to do to set it up. When looking into the interface and going to the devices configuration, this is the place you know from other devices which we have implemented over the course of the past month, you would find the PowerPoint remote in here. You simply add it, as we've done already. You give it a name, in this case PPT1, add the IP address and hit apply. As soon as it connects, it gives you the name of the loaded PowerPoint. It also gives you the total slides that you directly get a little feedback about what's happening and where you've connected to. Obviously, adding more of those PowerPoint remotes and having multiple plugins running on multiple machines, you can access multiple PowerPoints at a time. With a single click, all can be triggered simultaneously. At the same time, you have the chance of remoting it and reading feedback. But let's start at the beginning. Quickly create a button, a custom script, open the properties, and let's type in ppt1.next. This is all you need to do to advance the presentation. Mike, we're at slide 4. Could you go reverse, please? Thank you. So in that case, I have a button to click to the next slide. So if I click it, I would update to the next slide, as you can see down below. And you also see the different bullet points Mike was highlighting, how many clicks we have on that page. So the feedback perfectly works for speaker notes, for reading out the current slide, the total slides, and all the information you would need to know. The great thing about that is it doesn't matter who is triggering that. Mike is obviously using the same widget as I do, because he's just remoting mine. But he could use his own widget designer. He could sit at that computer and use the cursor keys to advance the presentation. No matter who clicks through the presentation or who changes something, you will be able to read back that information because it's shared with everyone, with all those connected plugins, and you will have a chance of subscribing to those events. That is also set up within the configuration, and if you're familiar to the event listeners, you will see that we have also added the event listeners for the PowerPoint over here. You would select the PowerPoint. You can say if you're only interested when the current slide changes, if you want to know if it's connected or not, or if you want to receive all information, meaning anything has changed, even when it was set to run, to exit, black or white patterns or whatever, you will always get the information and you can easily subscribe to that. One other thing we can easily do as well is going to slide number 4, hitting return, and we can directly jump to a specific point. So again, remote controlling and reading, no matter who's triggering it, is easily possible with the combination of that plugin with the widget designer. I guess it's time for more PowerPoint as we're just starting out to work with PowerPoint. So Mike has prepared some fancy slides for you.
Thank you, Marcus. Yes, so let's have a look at a few more features we added into Widget Designer. We added a good old feature you probably have known from older versions of Widget Designer called Viewer Mode. So the Viewer Mode is a non-editing mode where to run the whole Widget Designer with all its feature set, but preventing editing, closing the application, or unallowed saving. Why do we bring back that Viewer Mode? We want to be able to run the Widget Designer in public areas where any people can touch it, use it, control it, but they should not be able to get into the menu and change things. So for that, of course, we had to hide the toolbar, we had to hide the menu bar, and we had to prevent a lot of right clicks and shortcuts options. And we wanted to go a step further and also, of course, make sure that it is protected. So this brings us to the next feature that is combined with the viewer mode, and that's the file protection. Why do you want to protect your file? Well, you want to make sure that your knowledge, your work, your hours, your idea, everything you put into this Widget Designer cannot be manipulated, stolen, deleted, damaged, or whatever. So this brings it back to the same reason why you want to use it. You want to use it in public spaces. You want to hand it out to a stage conductor or to anybody who's not familiar with the software, and he should be able to control and run it. And if you have somebody else coming there who knows Pandora's box or a widget designer, you want to make sure they don't steal your ideas, your knowledge, your brain you put into there. So this is why we came up with a file protection again. You can have different types of file protection using different levels of passwords or different levels of protection if you just want to protect a certain part of the code, a page, the whole show file. So that's really your choice. And then we had to thought about the next step. How can you launch this? How can you start this? Because we wanted to make sure that you don't have to start the widget designer first, then load the application, and then you somehow get into this viewer mode. That doesn't make sense. So we added an argument that you can put directly behind the executable, and you will directly automatically start that file into view mode. But we even made it simpler, and in the file menu you can create a shortcut that also directly creates you the shortcut to load the project file in viewer mode. And remember earlier Markus mentioned our PB menu, and in there now you can also define which project you want to start of the widget designer, and then there's a checkbox that also gives you the possibility to directly start it in this viewer mode. I think it's enough about good old school PowerPoint. Let's have a look at something fancy. Let's have a look at a really cool video.
Notch is our real-time content creation tool that brings a combined workflow for creatives and technologists. Notch enables artists and designers to create high-end 3D graphics, live video effects and grading, interactive experiences, virtual production, and a lot more. It's the only real-time content platform that embeds directly into media servers like Pandora's box. This gives you frame-accurate playback and control with zero latency. For many years, real-time workflows have been a central part of the production process in lighting and audio. Move the slider on the lighting desk and you would instantly see the lights respond on stage. However, video content creation has been the odd one out, requiring overnight renders and a disjointed creative review process. It's this long and disruptive content creation cycle that we set out to solve 5 years ago by building a new tool, Notch. A tool that allowed designers and artists to create stunning graphics in a true real-time WYSIWYG environment, but also a tool that enabled you, through a media server, to sequence, play, and edit content directly on stage through live editing. This focus on workflow has never left us, and it continues to set Notch apart, regardless of whether you're delivering a corporate presentation or an interactive experience in a theme park. From our artist-focused UI to our Notch blocks architecture, every innovation in Notch is focused on how you reach your creative outcome in your existing AV infrastructure. But Notch is also about bringing cutting-edge rendering techniques that harness the power of modern GPUs, providing real-time ray tracing, procedural motion graphics, fluids, smoke, and much more. We are very excited to see Notch block playback come to the award-winning Christie Pandora's Box media and show control systems. We've been delighted to see Pandora's Box development team have really taken the time to put together a deep and comprehensive integration with Notch. By offering Notch users both cost-effective software-only solutions and state-of-the-art media servers and the power of Widget Designer, we can see Pandora's Box is setting a new standard in creative real-time media control. And we can't wait to see what our two communities achieve by combining these next generational tools.
Wow, that's stunning visuals, what you can realize with Notch. And this is why we, yes, finally, but now really did it right and implemented Notch within Pandora's Box. Combining the best of both worlds in media content creation, as Luke just explained, and all the advantages of a media server, of Pandora's Box, the timeline programming, the widget designer, and everything put together is really helping us, helping you to really create stunning visuals. How does it work? What do we need for it? You might know Notch is that content creation tool where a designer can create different parts. Might it be a two-dimensional visual? It might be an interactive installation in a fixed install in a museum. It might be a rental staging event, or even a complex 3D scene for virtual sets. This is what you can do with Notch. And somebody creates that content as a regular video. But the advantage is we are a media server, and Notch is real-time as well. So what we can do together is really exposing parameters. This is the term Notch uses, to expose certain parameters, not everything, only the desired ones, to the media server user. So I have not the control over everything which is happening, but exactly about that, what I need, or the designer wants me to change on the fly. We need to have a look at different things for different reasons, and just a couple of examples before we start with the first features I want to explain. You have seen Notch blocks already during this event. So the introduction graphics, the holding slide telling you that the show is about to begin, was a real-time rendered Notch block. All the transitions for the Q&A have been real-time rendered Notch blocks. Also, the lower thirds showing our name were real-time rendered Notch blocks. And we had the chance of putting the text into whatever we needed. The bullet points and everything has already been used during this event. Before we really dive into the Notch section, we need to show you a couple of more developments we've done to Pandora's Box, not only because it is needed for Notch, but it makes as well perfect sense together with Notch. Within the video, you've seen a live stage event where the singer was having some particles around him. So to blend images together, it's always good to have more than just an alpha channel, because an alpha channel is always really hard, not only a hard edge, but it doesn't perfectly blend into the image. And this is why you would need blend modes. And there's a good reason Photoshop has some as well. So we've reworked our blend modes we had since many years, and we've really made them better to use, and more extensive. So let's have a look at it. What we see on my screen is a background image, and I would just simply put another image on top of it on layer number 2. So by assigning this image and quickly scaling it down, because it is quite a huge image, we do see the second layer for sure. You will have the blend modes over here, and you directly see there are multiple of those. So now, using the screen mode, you might already see how those images blend. You will still see the globe and the skyscrapers over here. Let's flip through them. Depending on the color and the content in general, it will make sense to use one or the other. It doesn't always work the same way, but as you can see, this one, the color dodge, for instance, you clearly see the globe and you see the skyscrapers, and we have added a lot of those different blend modes to use regular content like videos and graphics to blend them together, or as well, in the end, getting a notch texture to put them more natively and better into your composition in the end. That is one thing we wanted to add. As mentioned, this works right away, and this works without Notch, but it makes perfect sense with Notch. So this is what we presented together. Let me clean up this one and advance to another example. When adding another picture, which is a little more colorful, we might want to add colors or change the colors of the image, because it might make sense to have an image blended into your scene, not with the blend modes, but just matching it better in colors. You might come up with artistic effects you want to do to your live inputs, probably an SDI feed, or to any other content. Or you might have a technical reason why you would need to use LUT shaders. What is that? A LUT shader, a lookup table, is basically changing the behavior of colors within your content. So often when capturing images with a regular video cam, you would have a really flat looking image because it hasn't applied the right color space to it, because it uses with a regular recording, and then with using the right LUT shader, you can put it into the correct color space, maybe as well depending on the display you're watching it on. So using those LUT shaders gives you the chance of changing the colors and basically the look of the entire image. Let's check it out. When looking at the effects, you will find a new folder which are the LUT shaders. And for now, I want to get creative. So I'm putting a LUT shader on it, quickly jumping back to the preview that you can better follow what I'm doing. And you will see that I'm having a lot of different LUTs over here, which I could select. When I bring up the mix fader, you will see it will get a reddish look overall and across the entire image. Let's flip through it. Some are really heavily changing the content. Some might make sense with the candlelight naming, some might not. But you see a very specific difference between crisp winter and crisp warm. And there are a couple of things which you want to use to make it matching whatever you're trying to build, to show, having on stage, and to matches with your props, or in a theater. You might just not use the exact content which was provided, and the LUT shaders will give you a chance of adjusting the color space or the color look to whatever you would need. You can actually create your custom LUT shaders and load them into Pandora's box. So you're absolutely covered on that area. Now it's finally time to really look at Notch. I mean, you've waited so long and we finally made it through, and we are really proud to show it to you and give you a nice demo right now. Let's jump back to the timeline and open my background image. Generally, a Notch block, as it is called when exporting a compositing from within Notch to a media server, you're exporting that block, which can be used and loaded into the media server. Within Pandora's box, it behaves like a regular video, you could say. So you might have programmed something on a timeline within Notch, like the beginning slide we showed you, the video, where it was just animating a virtual camera and it was showing us the content. So this can be used on the timeline right away. You might have different things put into that block, parameters and all that stuff, so you can easily load it into. From within the content view, I'm quickly dragging the connect asset block simply into my project, as you would do with any other regular content if it is a video or an image or something. What you realize is that it even opens up as a folder, because Notch uses different layers, and those layers are visible within the same block. The logo was our intro, the lowest third, and we want to have a look onto this transition over here. Whenever trying to use a layer from Notch, you would need to replicate it as a Pandora's box layer. So you're simply dragging and dropping it onto your local machine, like in my case, or onto a client, or wherever you want to render, on whichever device you want to render that Notch block. What you see is we really created a new layer in Pandora's box. So it's a Notch layer dedicated for this item now. And it already starts rendering right now, but we don't see it because it's the transition and starting with full alpha. Let's store it to the timeline. As soon as I hit play, you will see the transition is coming up. And if I click and jump somewhere onto the timeline, you see that the notch block is exactly following what I'm doing on my timeline. Backwards or forwards or jumping to a specific position, it will give you the chance of really showing what has been designed on that notch timeline at that moment. So what we're basically doing is synchronizing our timelines. We're telling the notch block what to render at a specific time, and notch is providing us the texture back. In the end, it is basically a two-dimensional texture which is being handed into Pandora's box as a regular video, with a big difference that you can manipulate it. Let's have a look at that. When looking into the parameters and selecting the transition layer, you will see that those two parameters over here, the text parameters, have been exposed. So this is all I can change. I cannot change the color because the designer had its idea how it shall look like, so I cannot fool around with that. All I need to do is using that transition and putting in the names for our Q&As. So in that case, I could type a live presentation. As soon as I hit return, it updates the text inside the notch block. Storing it on the timeline, it works like any other keyframe as well. Before that keyframe, it still keeps the default information of the block, so it still says notch integration presentation. As soon as I hit the keyframe, it'll change on the fly the text to whatever I've edited and entered in there. You can even animate one keyframe after another to come up with a typo style or something. So this is how easy you can use notch renderings on the timeline, synchronizing them, and also having those exposed parameters to remote control the block and what is handed back into Pandora's box. This was a fairly simple example, but the process always remains the same. You're adding the block, you're adding a layer, and then you can do whatever the designer has exposed to you. So probably we want to have a look at a more complex scene. Let's get started with that. When looking at this example, what you will see is a three-dimensional object being rendered in a 3D scene with nice lighting. And when having a closer look, you will also see that there are different particles flying around. And those colorful particles have an exposed parameter. So in this case, you see this is way more parameters than in the block before, but I can bring down the emitter of the color particles. So in that case, we will not create new particles, and the current ones will start to disappear. After their lifetime, they're fully gone. If I reactivate them, they will come back and pop up. So this is how you can also deal with different parameters or positioning, like we would need for the virtual camera, what we've put into that scene. This virtual camera gives us full control about navigating through the scene. And as you can see, we can navigate and animate the camera position on the regular timeline programming as you know it with any other parameters you usually use in Pandora's box. It really keeps the same process and the same concept, and it easily and perfectly integrates notch into our regular and known workflow. So now we're looking into that scene from a different position. We have animated the virtual camera, so we have access on that as well, depending on what you expose or the designer gives you to play with. And we can do more with that. Let's add a texture, which is a regular test pattern from Pandora's box, a regular image lying on your local hard drive. And you can assign it to be rendered inside the notch block. So what we do is sending a texture from Pandora's box into the notch block. And as you see, it's rendered inside a 3D space. So we're keeping the 3D space, and there is a plane which we can fill with a texture. This all is being rendered and shared back to Pandora's box, so we can use it regularly as known. The test pattern doesn't look that great, so we want to advance this a little bit. I will start with deactivating this notch rendering for a second, because we need to have a look where Mike is currently saying hello to us. So we have loaded a layer behind the notch scene that you can easily see Mike where he's standing, and you just had an overview that he's standing in front of a green screen, as you can clearly tell from this image as well. And you see some cabling on the left-hand side, you see the lighting on the right-hand side. This is nothing we want to see. So let's crop this on a layer. What we look at is basically an SDI feed, a regular camera with a regular SDI input card from Deltacast, which we always provided, and you're feeding the information of the image onto layer number 2. Nothing fancy so far. We have added the cropping effect. So we are, technically speaking, adding transparency at those positions where we don't want to see it. So this final texture, you can guess it already, needs to be routed into the notch block. So instead of using the test pattern over here, the color bars, we can now do something new. Share layer rendering. This means you might know the share layer texture. This only helps you to prevent hardware drive and consumption and all that stuff. But what we do is, with the share layer rendering, you can add loads of effects, everything you know from Pandora's box anyways, how you can assign it like I did before with the LUT shader. And this final rendered texture can now be routed onto a different layer, or in this case, into a notch block. So let's go ahead. Share layer rendering, live cam. And there we go. Mike is now standing inside our scene, but he's still covered in green. And this is what we want to free from him. Going back to the live cam layer, where we've just added the transparency via the cropping, we can now open up a new world for Mike by adding a green key. So we can use the usual parameters within Pandora's box, like this green key. And if you still have some spill somewhere, no problem. Just add a second green key. Maybe you want to add a spill reduce to get rid of that. And now we see that we're having quite good keying over here, and Mike is freely standing within that scene. Why is Mike dancing? That is a good question. Let's get back to the notch layer. So if we go over in the parameters, we can go ahead and change the lighting, maybe. So you will see that Mike is casting a shadow onto the floor, and we can adjust the brightness just that it fits our scene. But that is not the real answer why Mike is dancing. Mike loves particles. So let's go ahead. There you go. What you can actually do in Notch is using any kind of texture. And in this case, it is a live image in Pandora being keyed and being cropped from within Pandora's box, and not just taking this texture, whatever it is, including the transparency we're forwarding, and they create particles always at those positions where the texture is. So if Mike stands still for a second, then he will create more particles at that position, and as soon as he moves, they will disappear again. So this is a great thing, how you can interact with parameters, how you can interact even with video inputs and live rendered things. And this is really what makes it great using Notch and including the power of Pandora's box. We'll take it away from Mike because he's done with those particles. But did you realize that he doesn't really fit into that scene? Do we remember that there was something about LUT shaders to better match it? So we have prepared that as well. On the live cam layer, we do have a LUT shader prepared. Now Mike is way more fitting into that scene over there. Probably his face doesn't look as good anymore, but you will find the right LUT shader for the right position. We just wanted to make sure to show you that highlighting red is now better matching the scene. Mike cannot stop dancing because we've got more particles. And we're adding this now, this time, in front of him. So what you see is that Mike can hide behind the particles. So again, wrapping that up, we have a 3D scene where everything, this entire surrounding is rendered. It might be a studio, it might be a scene like this one. It might be a virtual set where you can track a camera and hook it up to the virtual camera inside Notch. And what you can add also is the layer in between. So we have that backplane rendering the background images. We have Mike in the middle, and we're adding another plane in front of him. So this is how we can really hide behind things. And I still have a chance of manipulating as well the position where the particles are flying. And you can imagine hooking that up to the widget designer or any other parts, how we can animate that on the timeline. It makes it fairly easy to work with that and to have it perfectly blended together. I guess it's finally time to stop Mike dancing, and we'll say goodbye to him. And we're coming back within a second, because I'm pretty sure after all these demonstrations so far, you'll have enough questions for the next round of Q&A.
All right, welcome back to the second Q&A round. Man, that was fancy, and I loved my dancing. I hope you did too. I hope you enjoyed it as well. So yeah, next Q&A round. Let us have a look.
Do we have some questions?
If we have some questions, exactly.
I'm pretty sure that Thomas is going to present us nice questions. And I did the Notch presentation, but he's a sales guy. So how about licenses of Notch? How do we deal with that?
Yes, good point. We are not gonna sell Notch license for Christie. We just think that makes no sense. Maybe you already have Notch. Notch has totally different types of license and subscriptions. So here we just keep the delivering the technology, but you get the license from Notch, the one you need, the one you're working with, or the one you already have, and you only have to plug it into the server, the software system you want to use with Pandora's box, and you're good to go.
Great. I guess we can add it this time already. I haven't even seen if that is a question you have as well, but I can imagine one. So how does it work with the licenses when dealing with it? So you only need a Notch dongle at that device where you're really rendering something. So meaning you have a manager and you don't need a preview, fine. You don't need a dongle. You might have a watermark license from Notch, even better. But the real playback license is only needed at those devices which really output the images. If it is 1 out of 10, it's fine. If it's all, it's good as well. So really depending on your need, we can have the Notch licenses only on those machines you really want to render it.
All right, Markus, there are a few questions regarding NDI.
Yes.
Concerning NDI, is there 10G bandwidth limit for incoming sources into B, is a question from Nick.
Okay, is the 10G bandwidth limit? There is definitely always a limit on certain parameters. You just mentioned the network. We are not limiting it in any way. Obviously, the limit is 10G, as this is the highest network port we can insert. Depending on which kind of NDI you use, and this is how I will quickly answer a different question from Sami, if NDI HX is supported as well. Yes, it is. So depending on NDI, the regular one in quotes, or the NDI HX, which is actually being used by the iPad as well, so we demoed it that it works, is providing different needs on your hardware. One is the network, the other one might be the CPU. So we have different limits. We're not limiting anything specifically. The final amount of NDI streams at a time always depends on your system, but it definitely is possible to have multiple NDI streams in the system, including alpha channel as well, so you're pretty much covered with all those necessities over there. Great.
All right.
Mike, what is about NDI outputs? Peter Bond was asking.
Yes, that's a good question. It's not implemented yet, but it's definitely something that is on the feature wish list, so stay tuned.
Yeah, exactly. We have many things which we're providing today already, so we're focusing on a first implementation to have really many things ready for you, and the list is not ending, so we're even having more in mind than what we're preparing over here today.
Marcus, more questions about NDI. Will PB accept NDI Alpha?
Yes, that is as well possible. So as mentioned, NDI HX or Alpha or whatever you come up with, all the regular formats are supported, because for sure you're having other 3D rendering applications or something where you like to have the Alpha channel. It works like any other input or any other video. You just simply have the Alpha checkbox enabled and you're ready to go.
All right. Marcus, this is the technical part, so
Okay,
you're getting a few
enough.
more questions. Again, NDI, has there been talk of other protocols like SRT?
SRT, not yet. As mentioned, we have a couple of things in our minds, but we're currently focusing, as Mike introduced, the SDVOE input card, which is another form of streaming video inputs. So is NDI. This is what we're currently focused on. About the upcoming things and what's still there, we're always happy as well to get your feedback, what you're looking into. But for now, SRT is not really on the horizon yet. Maybe I pick another technical one. Sam is asking about the notch content, if it is locked to time. Can it be free run as well? The particles are obviously free run, so it can be both at the same time somehow. So a question and an answer at the time. So this is actually true. Notch uses a similar approach as Pandora's box does. We do have the possibility to have it locked to time, so it's really following your now pointer, and we can set it to free run. When we set something to free run, we tell the content to just play. So we have an extra level in there. Notch is following the same process, but on their timeline. So as long as things are, I use the same terms, is locked to time on the Notch timeline, it will be played back either from our timeline or when using, for instance, a active value and telling it to play. Because we are telling Notch to play, and depending on if they said that it's locked to time or in free run, it might depend differently. So a couple of loops we're jumping through, but this is what we do with the textures as well. We can insert textures, get back a texture. So really diving deep, good question, but yes, everything is possible with that. What else is up?
More about Notch, Marcus. Are all Notch blocks loaded and rendered all the time, even if they are used only later in the show?
Nope. What you do is you're inserting them once, because if you're familiar with Notch, you might know, and that is not a bad thing, that is just about whatever you do with that. Depending on how complex your Notch block is, it can take 2 seconds to import it. It can take 2 minutes probably. So if you're wrapping all the textures in there and depending on what you include in the block, it might really be heavy to load. That said, we are only looking into the block and analyzing it. And this also works when only a client is loading the block and telling the master machine which parameters are exposed. So we're importing it, we're looking into it, and that's it for now. Obviously, we need some RAM reserved to have those things loaded, but it's not rendered on the GPU. So actually, the scene we've just seen was so many particles in there because we really wanted to push it. It is an RTX 6000 and was running at 85% performance on the GPU. So it has a heavy impact, but as soon as you leave the container, it will just drop down to 5% or whatever Pandora's box is using when it's idle. So no, it is not blocking your entire show, and we're not loading the blocks on the fly because we don't have 2 minutes to wait when running it into a container. So we do that once, and from there on, you're good to go. What's up next?
Let me quickly answer a question. So there was the question, from which revision version on will these features, NDI Notch, be available? When will it be released? Well, as you have already seen in the last hour and a half, we have demoed it, we have used it in the show already. So there is some kind of version where it's already running in and it's already implemented. It's not really, it will come in months or even later terms. So the show hasn't finished yet, so stay tuned.
Okay, something more. What shall we cover? So many questions. I'm really happy to see those coming in. Any plans regarding virtual stage visualization? I'm not sure if that is related to Notch as well, but you can do both with the products. You know that you can also load objects into Pandora's box and have the virtual cameras in here. You can do the same in Notch. So this is the combination we're currently doing for enhanced rendering as well. If it is about a really new feature only touching visualization in Pandora's box, this is a no for now. But I guess with all the existing features and as well with the enhancement with Notch, we definitely can cover most of the things we really need to look into at the moment, which is not saying we will not look into it in the future.
Marcus, there are a few more technical questions again.
Go ahead.
I will combine two of them. So one is from Antonia. Who is rendering Notch? Players or is normal Notch hardware license? And Duffy is asking what hardware is needed to use Notch implementation smoothly?
Yeah, why am I laughing? I'll start at the back and come to the first question. It depends what you're doing. Sorry always for that vague answer when it is about performance and minimal hardware specs, but it's really up to you. If you tell 10 million particles to render, yes, everything is rendered. Then you need a very good GPU. But the good thing is, Notch is about the GPU rendering. So it usually takes up most challenging part on the GPU. This is why we're also offering the RTX Quadro cards, because they're really made for great ray tracing, rendering, and all that stuff you would need for Notch. It's not that heavy on the CPU side, depending on what you do. So we can mostly share the performance as well good between Pandora's box and Notch, because the one is more dependent on CPU or on the hard drives, and the others are GPU features. So smoothly, it depends on your graphics card mainly and whatever you build inside Notch. The other question, where it is being rendered, it will be a server feature to make it quick and easy. Okay. Are we good to go as we spent already more than we thought we would need for this round? Or?
So, yeah, maybe I answer one more question and then maybe just move on.
Absolutely.
As we will have more Q&A possibilities later. So there was the question if there will be a discount for Notch when you're a PB user already. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to sell Notch from our side, as Notch has different license models and different possibilities, or you even already owning a Notch license. We don't want to interfere there. So this is really a separated thing, how you get the license from Notch, or what kind of license you want to use. We don't want to interfere there. So that was the old school and fancy part in the middle. And let's move on. The next features Marco's going to present is one that some of you have asked for a really long time. So I'm really happy Marcus is now able to show you the next feature. Here you go.
That's correct, Mike. We have also added more to Pandora's box. So whenever you are on a show, the first thing is you're starting a new project and you need to fiddle with your own settings. So shortly said, we have added user profiles. What does it mean to us? Let's have a quick look into the configuration. Most of you would know when looking at the configuration, we have the user settings, which really defines what the user is in need for. And we have the local part over here, which cares for hardware settings. The global parts are more about the clients, because even within a multi-user scenario, I can only set one value for a client, because this is the client which we're both controlling and triggering. But let's go back to the user. When we're looking at that and having a closer look, you will find that underneath the topic over here, the user profile shows the default name, because this is the default project. And it is really as simple as those buttons. I could add a new user profile. I'm naming it Marcus, And there we go, I do have 2 profiles. Now starting, whatever I change from within the resources, if I would like to have default imports of an image sequence in a different frame rate than probably Mike, or the sequence of the timeline, let's say 50 or whatever, this is all stored now within your profile settings. So you can really create your own preferences per user, and this is stored in the show file. First of all, it is within the show file, but you can also export it and import it. So it gives you all the possibilities to take your user preferences with you to the next show, or whenever you want to import them in a separate show. I mentioned already that we are including it into the show file, so it is accessible in there. Every time I load the show, it will be inside the show. If I copy it to a different PC, it will be within the show file. Meaning as well, in a multi-user scenario, we're having the same show file on all the machines which are connected and within a sync session. If I create my own profiles, because I'm working on the timeline and I have specific things to do, and Mike is dealing with warping, let's say, he might have a need for different user profiles and settings. So he will go ahead and work with his stuff, and I only change my preferences. It is not synchronized across all users anymore. Or it is not lost when already syncing again with another one. So you can really make sure that you have your stuff. And let's imagine we're having a third PC, which is backstage. We could go there, log in quotes, just selecting our user profile, and our settings are all there. This is the first step we're covering with it. We will also go ahead and add the view bar, which I've used a lot already today. And the view bar will then also be reflecting what you have chosen as a user. Because if Mike is swapping, he might be in need of switching the preview only. Or I, at the same time, might be dealing with the content and I want to have completely different views because I need to switch from content ingestion to a different tab or whatever. So it makes perfect sense to have that as well inside the user profiles. This is basically rounding up Pandora's box, what you've seen in the interface in that way, and especially when it comes to programming and video assets, inputs. But a media server is called a media server for good reason. It is more than video. It is an AV product, so it's about audio as well. And actually, we've started with audio this morning, and we're ending it kind of with audio as well, so I'm happy to announce the next video.
Over the last 15 years, IP technology has redefined business communication systems. Voice and data networks, once separate and distinct, are now unified into a single network using voice over IP technology. Like the convergence of telecom and IT a decade before, the audiovisual industry is undergoing a similar transformation. From microphones, speakers, amplifiers, mixers, cameras, and projectors, AV components are now becoming smart connected devices. Audio and video systems are integral to our daily lives. Broadcasters, classrooms, transportation hubs, shopping centers, restaurants, courtrooms, houses of worship, and recording studios all need to transmit high-quality audio and video. Together, the AV industry represents a $100 billion a year market. Dante, Audinate's disruptive media networking technology, is revolutionizing the way AV products communicate. Dante distributes high-quality, low-latency media signals with perfect synchronization over existing IT data networks. Rather than pulling hundreds of analog cables throughout a facility, audio and video signals can now be transmitted through a single Ethernet cable. AV signals can be routed or rerouted anywhere in the facility, configurable in a single click. And with this transition to intelligent AV devices, Audinate is delivering innovative network management software and applications never before possible. Dante is the most scalable, reliable, and easy-to-use media networking solution. Trusted by hundreds of AV manufacturers worldwide, Dante has rapidly become the new de facto standard for media networking. The convergence of AV and IT is inevitable, and Audinate will be at the heart of this new connected world.
I'm really happy to talk about Dante again and about these features. Let's have a look about the Dante product range. And the simplest thing probably here to say is Dante spoken here. Dante has a different products available. So let's have a look. Dante works flawlessly with Pandora's box. And remember at the beginning where we talked about the input card that gives you 128 inputs and 128 outputs and the redundant network card. But Dante also has software solutions. So there is also the virtual sound card from Dante. It has also cool features that you can connect it to any network port on your PC. But again, as the hardware card, this virtual sound card is bound to your hardware and it requires online registration. So doing something last minute on the show might be difficult. You have to take the stuff in advance, you have to place it in advance or register it in advance. So we teamed up with Audinate and discussed with them how to bring us all a step further and making it for you easier, available at any time and free of charge. So with them, we came up to the idea to implement the Dante license on every dongle you have. So on every Pandora's box license, you get 32 inputs and 32 outputs. You don't need to do any kind of setup. It's bound to your dongle and it's available at any time. So wherever you plug in your dongle, Dante is there with you.
Mike, I have a question at that moment.
Yes.
Every dongle, every license, do we need to speak about something?
Yeah, I think there's one more thing. Markus, would you like to talk about our license model a bit?
Oh yes,
All right, let's go.
So the question is, what do we offer and where do we offer? And we had that question in the Q&A already, so it is definitely a valid question. How is Pandora's box laid out? We do have different products, so let's have a look at it first. When you look at our entire product structure, you will find a lot of different products, which all do make sense for themselves. You do have a hardware and software combination like the server, the player, the compact player. And we do have software-only solutions, like the manager and the software player. So I mentioned player 3 times already, so let's have a closer look at those ones. Can you directly tell me the difference in the license model for the compact player, the software player, and the regular player? I mean, it's same, but still different? Yes, it is. Is it challenging once in a while? Yes, it is. Does everyone understand it? Absolutely not. There is a good reason why we have that, why we introduced those products. They made sense with their differences at a specific time. But going forward from now, we have decided to combine the players to a common single offering. Some would have multi-licenses, some would have more layers, some would have less. So having one product to just sell for the software players really makes it easier. Within a Pandora's box system or within a show file, you have now the chance of really combining those products. And it's not only because it was sold with hardware, a different way, it's behaving differently. And it's having kind of different limitations. Speaking about that, even when we make this simpler, we do always see the regular request for a good reason, that people want to have options or more functionality in the players. And this could be more than 4K playback. Some is 10-bit color depths. Some want to use probably notch in a player, but it is 3-dimensional and there is good reason why we have a server, because the server is offering all that functionality. And it's actually combining all those features, the entire feature set, into the server product. Again, we understand the request why people would like to have it, But how shall we deal with that? If we offer different options every time we come up with a nice feature which is inside the server, and we want to offer that as an option, we end up with unlimited options in the end. And people are asking us all the time for a product in between the server and the player, because there is a good reason. A server is a 4-rack unit high and 19-inch wide system. It's heavy. You cannot mount it onto a tabletop. You cannot put it in the roof. So what is the way between? People are often asking us for a software server, and this is what we finally, after all these years, are offering to you. The full feature set of everything we've shown you today, of everything which is already there, only on a single piece of software, a single dongle. Isn't that great? It finally allows you to use the full feature set of everything what we've shown on a single dongle. And we're really getting a further step. We're making a leap. We're combining everything we have to make it fairly simple into a single product, into a single rendering product. We're not having a difference between a server platform with software, a single software, or a player. We're actually putting everything together in a single product. Isn't that amazing and a big step? Really a leap forward within Pandora's box. We have never went there, so we're freeing your license from your hardware, but we also continue to offer our hardware. If you trust in our hardware, feel free to purchase it. If you have your own already, set out, use the dongle and use your own hardware, whatever makes sense and make the best product for you. So this is where we made the huge decision to really come up with a single software rendering license. It leaves us with 2 products in the end. It's the control software on the one hand side, and it is the rendering on the other. But isn't that still one too many? We have gone so far. And yes, we're even including multi-user and everything what you know from the manager into a single product. So we're combining it to the Pandora's box software license. From now on, this is all you need to take care of. No mix-up. Any differences in licenses. Say goodbye to limitations of 4K. Say goodbye to, I don't have enough rendering layers. You have unlimited features, unlimited functionality, unlimited video layers, and everything we've shown you today, and whatever is coming up in the near future, is all combined in a single software license. And this is really it, and we're so happy to finally announce that to you. And here it is, Pandora's Box version 8. This is it, Pandora's Box version 8. We can't believe it to finally be able to talk about that with you. We're so amazed that we can finally tell you, because we really believe this is the state-of-the-art product going forward, and that we trust that this will help you to achieve your projects better. But at the same time, Mike, adding that functionality into a single software offering, I mean, the server had a price, and do we need to expect tens of thousands of euros for a single license and output now?
Well, as our new phrase, make it simpler and more powerful, we said we do the same with our license. So all these features we just mentioned the last 2 hours, all the features we already had in our server system, you all get these amazing features for only 1,400 euros per output.
Say what?
1,400 euros per output. So that's less than $1,700 US dollars.
But wait, that must be a subscription price.
Ah, good point. No, that's probably the only philosophy we keep now. We don't like subscriptions. So you buy version 8, you get all these features, and whenever we do minor updates during version 8, this is free of charge. You buy it once, use it, have fun. Simpler, more powerful.
That is really great, we believe. And speaking about updates, they are usually available on our website. And now we answer one of your questions as well. When is this being available? We're actually offering a public beta version by tomorrow as well. So make sure to update your dongles as soon as possible, and then you can have a look into the new version 8 tomorrow on our website. We're also having a final release scheduled for February, so it's not that long wait time, but you can check it out tomorrow already.
Yeah, good point. Talking about the website, we're going to also, of course, launch a new website tomorrow morning with all the informations and news about the features we just mentioned today in the show. And, of course, also the video we just doing here the last 2 hours will be recorded later and available on YouTube, so you can watch that one as well again.
I can't stop smiling, actually. So I'm pretty sure you have a lot of more questions right now. Allow us a couple of seconds to grab back our chairs, and we're here for whatever you come up within the next and final Q&A.
All right, back to the final round Q&As. So type your questions in the chat, and we are happy to answer them.
I have one.
Oh, okay.
How about updates?
Yes, we just hit that topic briefly before. So, of course, you have to update to version 8 to be able to play around with all the new features. So, of course, we're going to offer you updates from player or manager version 6 or server version 6 up to version 8.
Sounds great. What I can add to that is actually that you will also be able to load your project files, so no worries. We're not making a big change within the structure of it. So whatever you have used within version 6, you can update, load the show file, and you're ready to go. How about questions? Or let's quickly cover one more thing, Mike. As you were speaking about the updates, how about if I would have purchased in December a license? Do I need to purchase a new one right now or pay for the upgrade?
Yeah, well, as we keep this a little bit a secret, and for us it was a big boom. I hope you liked the news also. Well, we thought about what would be fair and how would it be, especially now in COVID times, work well for you and us. So we came up that any license you bought, any Pandora's Box system you bought since April 2020 will get a free update to version 8.
I have another question for you, Mike, regarding the license model and the updates. Ikenna is asking if they could upgrade from a server to the new software server. Is that possible?
Yes, well, as I just said, yeah, we're going to also offer updates from server version 6 to version 8. Also, you remember in the past we had always that Pro server had free of charge update levels. So if some of you really have an old, I don't know, version 5 or version 4 server sitting around, there will be options to get that one up to version 8. As we are freeing you of the bound hardware limitation, there is a small minor update fee for servers to get up to version 8, to a version 8 license, and that's around 300 euros list price, so that's $360 per output.
Yeah, there is another question about the hardware as well in relation with the software. What we've just explained in the license model is that we're just simplifying the software part of the offering. As we have just introduced a new server revision 5, you definitely understand we're going to sell hardware and we're offering different levels as well. So we're not taking anything away. Bob was asking if the compact player will still be with us after this release. Yes, we're offering the server platform just to replace the 4-rack unit high devices, because we want to make it simpler, not to have too many options available. But this 4-rack unit hardware is the one offering, and the compact player for condensed systems is still there. And yes, adding a license, a version 8 license to a compact player or even to your laptop will allow you to use the entire feature set, all 3D, and everything was always only possible with a hardware for a software reason is now taken away and giving to you provided on a single dongle.
All right, Marcus, there are 2 questions for you. I'm going to combine. Alex is asking, are views included in the user profile? And can I export import them? And do I have to redo the user profiles with each new revision?
The thing is, first of all, on the revisions, they are stored inside the show file, the user profiles, which basically answers it doesn't or it isn't included in any revision. So whenever you update to a higher revision, not speaking about a new version like version 8, so if you're updating from version 8 to 8.1, you would load your current show file, what you've worked on before. As it is part of the show file, it will be directly available. If you load that show file later on, it is still part of the show file, so it is accessible without redoing it. But every time you open a new project, it wouldn't be there right away. This is why you can export and import your profiles. To the question of Alex, the user profiles, if they would include the views to be exported and imported, the current idea, as said, we'll roll out the user profiles first without the views, and within a later update, we will include them. To be honest, the current idea is not to include the views because depending on the projects, it mostly does not really make sense because the views are often including as well the sides which you have in there, which are different in another profile. And currently the understanding is, but we're absolutely happy for feedback, is that it doesn't make sense to have the views in there, but this is still a little bit vague because it's not finally set up so far.
All right. I would like to quickly answer one question from Jeremy. So regards to Down Under. It's damn late for you. I'm happy that you joined. What's happening with the widget licensing? So as you have heard before, we are also adding a few features for the widget designer, but it's not that it is a major release. So we are jumping to 6.5, am I correct? 6.5 in the widget designer, but there will be no update fee or no changes as it is just a minor update in the version 6 development of the widget designer.
Totally unexpected, we're getting more questions about the license model. So Mike, this one is for you again. Colin says 2,800, I say it again, euros, so list price on the euro side for a 2-output dongle. What about a setup, manager and clients? How about
Yes,
that?
good question. So yes, you are correct. If you get a dual output license, two license or 2 outputs on one license, it's 2,800 euros. You plug it in your computer, you get your 2 outpoints, you're good to go. Now you're asking for manager clients. So let's say an easy setup is we have one manager at the control desk and a 2 output server somewhere in the back doing a soft edge. So in total, you would need 3 licenses, so 3 times 1,400 euros. 1 license is running the manager, the other 2 are running the dual server output. As we did it in the past, you could either decide to have 3 separated dongles and you plug 2 dongles in the server, you get the multi-license mode and 1 dongle in the manager. Or if it's for a fixed install, you would probably order 1 dual license on 1 dongle and 1 normal license, 1 output license with the manager. So this explains hopefully also the idea. You get 1 license with 1 output and you can either use it one day as a rendering output somewhere on a screen, and on the next day you take the same dongle, plug it into a manager and you use it as a master controlling several servers in the network behind. Let's take now, last example. Let's take a big show. I don't know, you need 32 outputs. I would then probably recommend you buying 34 license, so 32 for the outputs and maybe 2 managers in front as multi-users.
Yeah, let me quickly add to that to answer a couple of more questions, or refer the questions to you. As you touched it, that as well, the same license can be used as the master. So we're dropping the name manager. The master and the rendering systems, the clients, can be used with the same dongle. For instance, the backup server, but during setup, you would use it as a multi-user. You have one license which fits all. And this is why we also need to have an upgrade fee for the manager, because there was a question if manager upgrades would be for free. No, they aren't. They have the same price as the players, and this is what I'm going to hand back to Mike in a second. But the upgrades for a manager do make sense as well, because you have a regular server in the end, which also is a manager at the same time in version 8. So we're really giving your manager, if we stick to the terms, an output license in the end. You're upgrading to version 8, and it can be both the control interface or a rendering output. There is one thing to mention about the multi-user. If you're using it in multi-user mode, you cannot use your outputs. If you're using your outputs, you cannot use the multi-user, at least for now. So this is what we're setting out, that you can use your licenses in the best way possible and to be flexible. Now over to you, Mike, because there were questions about the upgrade price as well for players, and in the same way, the managers.
Yes, good point. Thank you, Marcus. So if you want to update your player or manager from version 6 to version 8, it will cost you 500 euros per output, or what is it then, roughly 600 US dollars. The rest already Marcus explained about the technical features you all get using it either as an output or keep on using it as a manager dongle or license.
There is another question from Johannes. Thanks for sending that one in. He's asking about multi-licensing. Multi-user is on the control side. Multi-licenses is what Mike mentioned with having multiple outputs on a dongle. But we can also have multiple dongles stacked. And that was his question, if that's still possible. Yes. So this new version 8 license behaves like a regular player license before. So you can mix and match a dongle with 5 licenses on it, on a single dongle, together with 3 single licenses if you have enough USB ports. And you would add them to as many licenses as you plug in. So the behavior, like the players, stay the same. The feature set of the server stays the same and is included and even enhanced. And this is what we're selling to you going forward. A single license doing that, everything which can be stacked, so you can have multi-license servers just on a dongle.
Marcus, Mark is asking, if I want to equip a 6-screen movie theater for multi-AV source to any screen from a single non-DCI player, can you clarify what I need from Christie?
You need a sales guy and his telephone number. I would really prefer at that moment not to go into those specifics, what you would need from equipment with projectors and all that stuff. But I'm pretty sure you can reach out to us and we'll provide you with a way better answer in a direct discussion rather than putting it out now roughly in here.
Well, me as a sales guy, I would like to add.
Fair enough.
I mean, you know that we all joined Christie now 5 years ago, and Christie is the only manufacturer that can deliver you the whole product range from content playback over transmitting the content and then playing it out, either over a projector or LED wall or screen. So yeah, as Marcus said, there should be an in-depth discussion with you to fill the whole signal path. But yeah, that's the benefit of Christie, that you have one person to call and we can help you.
Great. Another question regarding the output licenses from Stephen. He's asking if there is an output limitation. Yes and no. First of all, we're not offering 1,500 different licenses right away. So you will not be overloaded with part numbers. We're just offering a maximum of 8 licenses on a single dongle as a regular number. But even if you want to have 15 licenses on a dongle, it's not a problem because we're having one product number which adds more licenses to it. And you can keep going until you want. I guess there is somewhere limitation for whatever reason, about 130 outputs or something. So if you hit that limit and have a problem with that, let us know.
All right. As we picked that time of the day to do this show, to be able to talk to each region at the same time, it is actually getting quite late in the APAC region. So as we more or less have rounded up the official part of the show and we are not suddenly teasing new features, we would like more or less to end the official part, that whoever wants from the APAC region can go to bed. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to stay here. We just want to make a 1 or 2 minute break, keep the stream running, and then we come back so we can just have a drink and rest. And then we are really happy to answer more questions. But maybe it's fair to close the official part and just keep on chatting with you.
And speaking.
So yeah, thank you really for joining the Connect. We really looked forward to this event. We were excited now finally telling you the news and the changes we wanted to do to the product. Thank you to the team here. Getting this even running in COVID conditions was tough and difficult, and a very big thank you to the whole team.
Absolutely.
You want to add something, Marcus?
Yes, a huge thank you as well to our development team who made that happen, and as well everyone who was kind of involved to get this together, and that explicitly includes our partners as well. So big thank you for your trust, giving us the chance of working on those products with you together to make the most out of hardware, software, combinations, whatever it is. Thanks for partnering up with us to provide you, our customers, the best experience overall. So really, thanks for tuning in. It was a pleasure to host this for you, and the feedback is already amazing. We're having a peek at the chat and all the questions coming in. As said, we're staying here. Just give us a minute and we're back for you. And for the rest, whoever wants to go to bed or leave for any reason, many thanks.
Stay healthy, and we hopefully see each other live again on an exhibition or show soonly.
That would be amazing. Take care. Thanks
Bye-bye.
for joining.